About 6 years ago, Buster found himself in a Humane Society shelter because he couldn't really get comfortable with people, and he had seizures, and he was just sort of a neurotic cat. So we found what we think is a solution, and we've really helped him. It involves the use of a certain substance that is welcomed in the state of Colorado, but not so welcomed in my state of Utah. This treatment was suggested, or rather at, by a friend who's a veterinarian. And what it has done for Buster is turned him into a friendly, lovable, actually excellent family pet. We think it basically saved his life from one of misery and discomfort all the time to one of being happy. Now we're really happy to have Buster around. All right, guys, we're going to do the teardown of a new project. This one here is a Westinghouse model. I believe it's, let's see here, H-161. H-161. This is an AM/FM radio. I'm guessing, I haven't done the research on this radio yet, but I'm guessing this was made about 1948, something like that. Maybe up to about 1950. I don't believe it was made much later than 1950. So I would say 47, 48, 49, something like that. It's got some really cool features. If you'll check out the tuning mechanism, it's this nice arch, and I really like it. It's a nice look, and it is working. The dial cover looks like a piece of clear plastic that's been painted on the backside, and there are some details also etched into the backside. I'm not sure how that's done. Maybe that's not paint. Maybe that's a piece of metal that has been adhered to it. And then there's some words painted, amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, I believe also painted on the backside because I cannot feel it. So that'll make this nice for polishing. It'll look really good. So the tuning string feels pretty good. The owner reports to me that this thing works. I believe there was some hum in it, is what he said. But I'm going to test it anyway. I want to make sure everything is good. We're going to do a recap on it at the least and make this thing last for a long time. It's got some pretty knobs on it. The marbled look like Bakelite. It's reddish color, marbled. Real pretty. They're going to have to come off anyway, so we'll go ahead and take one off. There's a felt washer behind each one of them, I imagine. There's one behind this one anyway. And it's one of the thick felt washers, so I'm going to want to hold on to these for this guy because the new ones are so thin and, I don't want to say cheap, but they're thin. And these old ones here are nice and thick, and they fit into a recess in the knob. So I want to hold on to those for him. These knobs are nice and clean. They won't even need to be polished. They're beautiful knobs. So I'll go ahead and pluck all four of them off. This one here has a little dot. So this one on the right has a little dot on it. A little gold dot right here. The tuning knob did not have a dot. There's no set screw holding these on. It just has the little metal spring, that little piece of spring steel to hold it against the flat. I don't see a dot on this one. Nope, there's no dot that I can see on this guy either. So I'm gonna put these all in a baggie right away. This is a really cool radio. Someone refinished it or painted it to look like wood. So there really is nothing else to remove on the front side. I don't know how this is attached. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'm going to put a towel down and lay this down so I can look at it correctly. But first I'll let you see the insides here. It's, I'm not sure how many tubes. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wow. With a field coil speaker. So it's kind of old school. For its vintage. It's during that transition period when things were going, from the octal tubes to the minis. I'm sure the minis have been around for a few years, but you know what I mean in general. And they were transitioning from field coil off into permanent magnet speakers. Now this speaker is a little loose. All four of the speaker mounts are loose, so that's something to pay attention to when I put this back together. I'll have to look at the SAMs. The mount is funky. Maybe it's supposed to be mounted that way. I will check it out. But it doesn't... what I'm trying to point out here is that the basket here is smaller than the opening, so the basket doesn't screw tight against the opening, and then there's these strange bridge brackets that go across here. And I do not think that's normal. I do not think that's the way it's set up originally. And you check out this rainbow stuff in here. I don't know if that's original or not. It's hard to tell. I never saw anything like that before in a vintage radio. It does appear to be fixed onto the dial back, you know, the dial plate. So I don't know. I got a lot to learn about this radio. One thing I noticed right away, it is a chassis and a chassis. So the RF is in a separate chassis right here. So the next thing to do here is put something soft down, lay this down face down, and start taking off the chassis screws and pulling the chassis out. Okay, let's lay this towel down. This table is funky. It's a drafting table, and the clamping mechanism doesn't tighten very much, so it wants to tip. I have to be very careful to keep all the weight on this side. All right. Okay, you can see the chassis now. Let me disconnect this antenna first. It's kind of a weird looking antenna. I wonder if it's the FM. They've got it in a bow tie arrangement under the cabinet here. No, there was a... Now let me see, there's a loop that goes around the outside perimeter of the cabinet right here. It's been painted over. And it looks like it goes around three times, because it's stapled to the bottom. This will need some new feet on it. I have feet. So it goes around 3 times and then connects right here. I imagine this bow tie is the FM dipole antenna. So that's what I'll do. That's what I'll call it, the FM. So I don't think I want to reroute this antenna, because that's not going to redo the cabinet. This antenna probably works fine, but I'll have to put an extension on it because that wire is a mess. So I'll just go ahead and cut it there so I can see where it came from. That's some pretty tough wire. Alright, so the antenna's disconnected, both of them. This is AM here. Just mark that way. Alrighty. Let's see what else is hooked up that I need to get disconnected before I try yanking it out. Let's see, we have a power cord, that's fine, we'll leave that alone. Oh, I love radios that have connectors. Got to pull the rectifier tube out. And then, oh, I'm sorry. Holy crap, that's not the rectifier, that's a 6L6. That's really neat. All right, cool. I would have figured it was something smaller. 6L6 is a nice tube. We got several 6L6 amplifiers. The connector's a little reluctant, but so you coax it. All right. Little 5-pin with 2 big pins and 3 skinny pins. Alright, try to put that where it isn't going to do harm to the speaker cone. Looks like this whole dial arrangement will come out with the radio. So I have I have 2 screws. These look like 1/4 inch, I suppose. That'll come out, and I should be able to lift that chassis right out of there. Kind of an interesting chassis mount washer, and it's actually in good condition. It's not stiff or anything, and it's not cracked. This will be reusable. That's good. And they're easy enough to replace later, that if they do get broken before the radio needs other attention, that they can be replaced. Yeah, that's in good shape. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's baggy these up. You might notice that I like to baggy things up right away. It's happened to me multiple times where I'll drop something from one box and lands in another box, and I have the wrong radio parts in a box. If I didn't bag them and mark them, I wouldn't know that that was the case. So what I do, every single one, I put a white background there so you can see it. Every baggie, I put the radio, the model, and what the part is for. And that way, when I'm looking later, believe me, you're grateful to yourself later when you've done that, because you're not searching for stuff. Let's see now. Yep, pretty simple. I think I'll stand it up. I don't need to be lifting it out of there when I don't have to. Okay, you want to be careful, I guess, when you pull this out. That needle is just tall enough to want to get caught on this top lip right here as you're tugging it out. So I didn't do any harm to it. I saw that happening and I kind of tilted it a bit. Okay. Pretty dirty, but otherwise looks okay. Let's look at the dial. There's the dial. That's kind of an impressive looking dial. I like it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I thought I counted 8 before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's right. See how the tuning operates? Really simple. I won't mess with it if I don't have to. That's kind of funky the way that spring is. Wraps around the corner like that. So I'll probably change this tuning cord. It's a thin gauge, cloth cord, and so it'll break eventually. Might as well change it. Let's look under here at the chassis. Really simple, straightforward. Not much electrolytic cap there. Of course, there's band switch here. Remarkably simple looking for an FM radio. I'm sure it shares the IF transformers with the AM. So generally, this is a nice clean chassis. The chassis washers appear to be in pretty good shape. There's some cracking here. I'll probably replace these. They're soft enough, and they will work if I can't find any, because I've not seen this style before. But it wouldn't hurt to replace them. It's interesting the way they mount. Really, there's nothing more to do on this until I put it on the bench and test it out. But all these paper wax caps look original. These here might not be original, but they're certainly not much later, even if they aren't original. This one here looks like it's gotten hot. It's kind of bulging and coming out the end. That's usually what happens when they get hot. This one here has gotten hot too. It's cracked and it's bulging and kind of oozing out this end. So both of these have gotten hot. These look electrolytic also. So we've got 2, and it looks like a 2-cap can here. So 4 electrolytics to replace and a bunch of paper and wax caps. There's some micas, and then there's a bunch of these dominoes that always look like micas, but they, believe me, they're paper and foil, and you replace those too. Let's look at the power cord real quick. Power cord actually looks okay. I'll ask him if he wants a new one, but I don't know. I'm not bent on replacing this. It's in pretty good shape. It's flexible. I don't see any cracking. It's a nicer, old style power cord, so no point in replacing what isn't broken. I will put a fuse in it. These radios must need to have a fuse. I'll probably put an under chassis fuse, or I'll put one on the side here. Let's go ahead and pluck this speaker out. I do not want to disturb the angle of these brackets here, because if they are the correct way that this is supposed to be mounted, I want to make sure I get it right and don't have to fiddle with it when I put it back in. Now what you're looking at closest to you, this is the bottom right here. So the way this thing originally came mounted, the output transformer was mounted toward the bottom. So a couple of these are loose already. They're all kind of loose. Good movement. You can see what I do when I'm doing this. I just push on the cone just a little bit, real gently, at the center, right here, with like 2 or 3 fingers. Very gently, guys. And I just move it a little bit. And I listen for raspiness, you know, for any scraping or crunchiness of the voice coil in the gap. This one's fine. There's none there. I expect this speaker to be a good speaker, so I'm not going to horse with this. I typically will put a speaker in its own box, only because it's less likely to get a hole poked in it that way. So these grills here do protect the speaker some. It does appear that the speaker mounts down against this masonite right here. The speaker is out. I'm going to test it. The cabinet is ready to just put away and leave be until we decide what we're going to do. You know, give you a better look of the speaker cloth. Doesn't look like it belongs that way, but hey, he loves the radio the way it is, so maybe just polish this up and leave it be. I'm beginning to think that somebody cut this. No, that looks too right. That's painted on there. This part's original. Okay, well, no more chatter. I'm going to look at the pictures on a Sam's or something. All right, guys, we're going to do a first test on this Westinghouse. Geez, I forget the model number on it already. It's a Westinghouse model H-161. Let's give this a shot here. This is a first power up. Just I'm doing an assessment on it to see what it's going to take to get this radio back on the road. And let's just take a look at it. Before I turn it on, let me tell you a little about the radio. It's an H-161. It's an AM/FM, as you can see from the dial scale here. This radio has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tubes. This little chassis you wouldn't think would be an 8-tube radio. It does have a field coil speaker. It's a fairly small speaker, but field coil speaker that's in really good condition visibly. So we'll put that speaker out here, and we'll give this a shot. I've got the radio turned on. Volume's turned up about 3/4. That's usually good. And I'm going to go ahead and the isolation transformer's on already. Let's turn the variac on. All right, let's bring this up in power then. Okay, you can see I have lights. I'm at about 45 volts now. I do have lights. 60 volts. I won't hear any sound for a bit yet. Okay. 70 volts. Current is nice and low, probably about 1/4 amp. I don't know how accurate this ammeter is at the low end of the scale, so it looks like about 1/4 amp. 80 volts. Current is climbing a little bit. Every time I move it, current comes up a little bit. 90 volts. I'm hearing some static on the radio. Very cool, very cool. And I hear a radio station. Check that out. Now I do have an antenna hooked up. Let's see. Oh yeah. Now you must remember, this radio has an in-cabinet loop antenna, so it is basically wired around the inside of the wood cabinet. So that loop antenna probably needs to be in place for this to work right. But I am receiving RF, processing RF through the IF, and I've got audio, and I'm playing the station. So all the stages are good. They're all working. Now let's bump this up to, and my current now is just shy of 1/2 amp. Let's bump this up to 100 volts. Gets a little louder. Current's now just a little above 1/2 amp. 110 volts. That's usually as far as I'll go on the first power up. On a test power up. All right, let's see if I hook this up to a long wire antenna, what happens. See, when I hold it, it gets clearer, but it's still pretty distorted. You hear the distortion? There's a lot of hum. All right, let's plug this into a long wire. it comes in with less static, but a lot of distortion.
Acted directly against his subject. There is a season, but this one.
Okay, so here's what I know, and this is why I do this first power up. Speaker works, plenty of volume. So the amplifier's working, it's putting out, the output transformer's fine, everything's good on the output side. I have power, of course, so the power supply is functional. And I'm able to process an AM signal, which tells me the IFs are okay, which leads me to believe that the FM is probably okay, going to be okay too. Hey, sun went behind a cloud. Look at that nice dial. Isn't that pretty? So that tells me that the FM is probably going to be okay. All the tubes are lit. Filament circuits are good. Really, this is a matter of recapping, tweaking for the alignment. There'll be some miscellaneous things, replacing the dial cord, things like that. I've got some dressing up to do. The chassis is a little dirty, so it's going to require some thorough cleaning. This tuning needle here, this dial pointer, is corroded, so I'm going to have to clean that up and repaint it. So all this down here is going to have to be cleaned and lubricated and so forth. This dial pointer needle is going to have to be cleaned up and repainted. I'll clean up this dial. At first blush, I thought this was somebody's add-on, but no, I think this is right for the radio. But we'll see. I think they did something a little strange with the escutcheon for it, but I think this was original. I've got to probably replace just a lamp down here that indicates for FM. I'm hoping that's all it is, just a lamp. There's lots to do on this. It's going to be a big job in the sense that there are a lot of tubes for such a small chassis, but the essentials of RF and audio frequency, power supply, and output are all there. They all seem to be doing fine. There's a lot of distortion, a lot of hum. Those things can be fixed with the recapping and alignment. So basically, I think this H-161 is definitely a radio worth restoring. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this thing down now. Alrighty, boys and girls. That's a wrap for this one. We'll get working on this thing, and next time you see it, I'll have more of the chassis taken apart. We'll get ready to recap it. So from your Western Outpost in Salt Lake City, this is Michael, and that's all for now. There we go. Talk to me.
Who, me?
You, yes, you.
Or did you want me to talk to Buster?
Buster. How's Buster?
Buster? Can you say meow? Listen.
His stoner medicine.
It's getting weird.
But look how nice his nose looks. Hey, Buster, look how good your nose looks, buddy. Well, I want to see how this video looks.